Coming up, we are covering the new film Killers of the Flower Moon and hear from those who helped behind the scenes, from the red carpet premiere in Hollywood to Leonardo DiCaprio's private chef. Plus, we learn how a Bic pen is defining an artist in Phoenix. We have those interviews, plus headlines ahead on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
The ICT Newscast is sponsored by the Indian Land Tenure Foundation, a nonprofit organization serving American Indian nations and people in the recovery and control of their rightful homelands. On the web at iltf.org.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amarawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. We start today in Washington, D.C., where after 3 weeks, House Republicans have finally elected a new speaker. With unanimous support from the GOP, Representative Mike Johnson from Louisiana took the gavel, saying the People's House is back in business. Following the vote, Indigenous Representatives Tom Cole, Mary Peltola, and Josh Brackeen all congratulated Johnson. Democrats Peltola and Sharice Davids voted for Hakeem Jeffries instead of the Republican choice. Congress must now work quickly to pass either a continuing resolution or all 12 appropriations bills in order to avoid a government shutdown. The House is in session for just 5 days before the November 17th deadline. Johnson was supported by former President Donald Trump. It is not immediately clear what Johnson's previous history is working on Indigenous issues while in office. Well, there's new research on incarceration rates for American Indians and Alaska Natives, and it doesn't look like great news. A report from the research group called the Prison Policy Initiative found troubling patterns. For example, Alaska Natives currently make up 40% of the inmates in the Alaska prison system, but they only make up 15% of the state's total population. Wandra Burdom, who is a spokesperson for the Prison Policy Initiative, told KNBA in Anchorage the data suggests something deeply unjust about the criminal justice system. Bertram added that the Alaska criminal justice system is racist, pointing to growing incarceration rates. Since 2000, inmate populations in Indian country jails climbed by 62%. In all other local jails, the number is even higher at 85%. The Prison Policy Initiative said the key to reducing those rates and disparities is looking into factors such as homelessness and poverty. In Montana, Indigenous communities are fresh off their first major snowstorm of the year. Up to a foot of snow dropped in Helena earlier this week, causing some school bus routes to be canceled and prompting folks to search for their winter coats, boots, and jackets to stay warm. Late last week, Helena was recording temperatures in the lower 80s, which is about 25 degrees above average for this time of year. The state's 8 federally recognized tribes outside of Helena saw some snow, but mostly lots of cold temperatures. The storm also moved across parts of North Dakota. Officials from the National Weather Service cautioned that the first snowstorm of the season is typically the most dangerous. That's because over the summer, people are used to driving on dry pavement. Some higher elevations in the northern Rockies were expecting upwards of 2 feet of snow. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. You may have heard of or even seen the film Killers of the Flower Moon that has garnered global attention with its take on Osage Nation history. But what about those who were not on screen? Chef Niko Albert Williams was a private chef for the lead actor Leonardo DiCaprio during production. She spoke to ICT's Mark Trahant about setting her table with Indigenous foods and why we should be thinking about duck eggs.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I really want to start with kind of the news of the moment since the movie's coming out, but tell us about your work with Hollywood.
Yeah, actually, the way that movie production works, it was 2021 that I spent 5 to 6 months working on the set of Killers of the Flower Moon, cooking for Leonardo DiCaprio. So that was quite an experience. And then, it was an immersive time to be just wrapped up and all day, every day being on call for, Hollywood. And then the movie wraps and you have to kind of get back to real life. And so that's an adjustment. And now that the movie's coming out, it's bringing it all back.
Well, one more Hollywood question. That was such an important, the movie is such an important story to Oklahoma. Maybe tell us about the meaning of it.
Well, Killers of the Flower Moon tells the story of the Osage murders in the 1920s, and it's a story that is very real and very known to the Osage community here, but has not been touched upon in mainstream media at all. The history books don't talk about it. Even our Native community here in Tulsa, doesn't talk a lot about it until now. This movie is bringing a lot of it to light. The book started bringing a lot of it to light. And there have been, Osage authors and Native writers writing about this time period and the atrocities that happened to Osage families over this, long period of time, and all of the struggle that happened due to, everything that's detailed in this new book and this new movie, but attention was never really given to those people telling the story. So it's an interesting time to be having this on display for the greater mainstream public, this story that we've always known, but hasn't been talked about.
I want to ask you about how, there's a real change going on in how particularly Indigenous communities think about food, and you're very much a part of that. So maybe talk about that for a second.
Sure. There's, we have such an idea of what traditional food is in Native communities. And a lot of times those foods are survival foods like fry bread, or foods that are, ingredients that were brought to us through colonization or through, the food ration programs, commodity food programs that our ancestors, kind of applied their ancestral knowledge to, but basically they were making sustenance food. And now the movement is to reconnect to ancestral foods as a way of healing, because further, not just traditional foods, the foods that we think of that we eat at powwow or, at family gatherings and things like that. We're talking about going back further and going to pre-colonization. What were our ancestors eating? How were they preparing it? How were they growing it? And how has that affected their health versus the way that we see our health today? And the answer is that, reconnecting to these traditional ancestral foods is a way to heal a lot of the damage that was done by relying on those commodity foods. So a lot of it is educating our own communities about what truly ancestral foods are and how delicious they can be.
So I want to ask you about ducks.
Because I can talk forever about ducks.
I'm intrigued by ducks.
Coming from, a background of the professional culinary world, eggs are a big part of that. And when you think about eggs in, contemporary American kitchens, there's never any question that it's chicken eggs. It's and nowadays people are moving toward maybe farm eggs or, the happy eggs that are healthier for you because the chickens are healthier. But I love the idea of taking that even a step further and saying, chickens are not indigenous to North America. If our ancestors were eating eggs, they would have been eating duck eggs. And our ancestors didn't necessarily domesticate ducks for that purpose, but ducks are an indigenous animal to our region, and they were a food source. So when I'm making traditional foods, I like to substitute duck eggs. And, yes, that does tie it to our ancestral foods, and they are usually, when you buy duck eggs, you're getting them from a source where they're very well cared for. The ducks are well fed, they are free range, because there really aren't large scale commercial farming operations producing duck eggs, because they're not, a mainstream food. But further than that, I find them to be so much more delicious than chicken eggs. They have a lot more flavor, they're richer, they make incredible baked goods and custards, and I mean, even just a simple omelet, it's a whole different experience when you use something like a duck egg.
Any last thoughts on what the importance of Indigenous foods at this moment?
I mean, it's just a really exciting time as a chef, as a Native chef specifically. Everybody even in mainstream culture and in our Native communities is looking for ways to feel healthier, to live longer, to live better lives, increase our quality of life. And it's just very beautiful to me that our ancestors have laid the groundwork for that. All we have to do is go back and look at these seeds that they left for us and learn to plant them and learn to cook what they grow. And that's the key to true wellness, is connecting in, yes, a physically healthy way to Indigenous foods, but also healing through reconnecting to our culture with these foods, because food can give you mental health, can give you emotional health, can give you that spiritual well-being that's often empty and missing from the packaged foods that everybody eats today. So it's just a really important way for us to be able to take our communities into the future. We have to be healthy, and we have to be reconnected to our food sources.
Chef, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
The Los Angeles premiere of Killers of the Flower Moon brought Osage tribal citizens and its consultants to the red carpet. Opening weekend put the film at the top of the global box office at $44 million. While the film has received mixed feedback regarding sensitivities and narrative, those involved shared their experiences, reactions, and hopes for the impacts of the film. ICT's Paris Wise has this reporting in partnership with FNX. Take a look.
On Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, producers, consultants, crew, and tribal members flooded the red carpet for the premiere of The Killers of the Flower Moon, followed by a showing of the film inside the Dolby Theater. This was one of many events where members of the Osage Nation came together to celebrate and represent their community.
I was able to see the movie at the Tulsa premiere with Osages, a lot of people in the Osage Nation. And then I also had the opportunity to go to New York City for the first premiere, and that was so much fun. And so seeing it now for the third time, I'm very excited because I'm going to look at more of the designs in the movie. I'm going to pay more attention to the clothing, I think. It does tell a deep history, a deep story, and I'm very excited for others to learn that and experience that. And it's a beautiful movie, very well executed. We are represented very well, and I'm just so excited to see it again. I was the Osage Nation princess during all of filming, and I was able to participate in the first day of filming, where I was able to perform the Lord's Prayer in Indian Sign Language. I also was able to participate in the last day of filming, where a bunch of our Osage community came together. And I'm not going to give that many spoilers. You can see it in the movie. But I was so grateful to be a part of that, because I was with my people, and this movie is surrounding my people. And so that's why I thought it was so important that we were all together.
I swell with pride each time I see it, and then I hurt like the Dickens when I see something that, just really strikes me. But everyone wants to talk about seeing it in Cannes, and how fabulous was that? For me, all the takeaways from New York, from London, from Cannes, the best time I ever saw it was with the 700 Osage people that helped make the film in Tulsa when we were able to do that in July. And it just really is, that was just such a special moment to be able to do that, and for Imperative and for Apple and for Marty's team to be able to help put that together and make that happen and really drive that home, that was a very important moment. And really, I just encourage everyone to go buy tickets, go see this film. The larger audiences, the more the impact it will have and positively on the Indian country, really.
It's been crazy. I mean, just like seeing family from Fairfax and like Oklahoma and period on a red carpet for the Killers of the Flower Moon. It's been really surreal. Just also being able to meet like Martin Scorsese, just because he wants to be involved. He wants to do everything right. So it's very surreal.
The making of the film brought opportunities for Osage Nation members to be involved in the process and to have new experiences in an industry where Natives are still seldom seen. The plot of the film is a very real history of the Osage and the violent crimes committed against them. While hearing directly from Native communities is imperative in successful storytelling, it does not go without having to earn trust. Academy Award-winning filmmaker Martin Scorsese's involvement in this story of the Osage Nation has bred new relationships and learning opportunities for everyone involved.
I mean, I'm an artist, so it was walking hand in hand pretty well. And then obviously being Osage and being so connected to the film, I felt like I had to tell this story for them, for them and my grandparents and how proud they would be. And I mean, there were many nights where I was pacing around in my backyard like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I just want to make the right decision. And if I didn't know, I'd be like, we gotta talk to an elder. I'm not there yet, so, and he was just so welcoming, and I don't know, he just handled it so well. Well, Marty, we refer to him as Winzeki Marty now, so because he's like uncle, and he took that in so well, and he was like, yeah, he got it. He's so integrated now. We took him to the dances, and he sat with us, and we'd sit and discuss like, oh, okay, why are they doing that? What are over here? It's just, he was so graceful.
I just tell people he's a regular old guy. He's funny, but he's serious. And when he's serious, and he's kind of like, older Indians, they're real funny at times, and they'll cut up and you never know when it's going to happen, but they're also real serious, and they can be real serious and real funny at the drop and turn of a hat. And he's really easy to talk to. He's very engaged when he's talking to you. I can just feel the need for knowledge, and I don't know if anybody else could have made this film the way that he did in fostering respect and trust, because Indians don't trust very well, and we have a reason why we don't. And it took a while. There was a lot of folks that weren't sure about this. There's still going to be some that aren't going to be sure about this, but we took the opportunity to do the best job that we could to put it out there so that hopefully whoever decides to watch this and learn about Native Americans or Indians or Osages or Wajages or anybody else, that they take the time to dig in and find out that there's great history there. There's great relationships there. And, so much history of the Americas aren't told because of it. And I hope that it gets an interest for everyone to say, who are those folks? What happened to them? Just like the Greenwood Massacre. You don't hear much about it. It happened in Tulsa about the same time. And we learn about it, we know about it, but so many people don't. I think it matters how much the production team and or director or the studio, however it works in Hollywood, because this is my first time to ever, work in movies. I think it matters how much they respect human beings first, and secondly, how much they respect someone's culture, someone's tradition, and then how much time they decide that they were going to immerse themselves in that and let it absorb through their skin. A lot of times I would have to call some of our elders. Most times I called our elders when there was a question in that sense, and called 2 or 3 or 4 of them, just so I could get an accurate telling of the situation they might be asking about. There were times that they would ask questions, but we didn't know, because historically, no one's alive from that era. And they had to rely on what type of documentation was there, or, Indian way is storytelling.
Reaching new heights in Native representation in Hollywood can bring these stories to those who have never heard them before, but the reactions and impacts back home are what matter most.
I'm anxious to hear what people's reactions are. I mean, I know they're like, it's like 98% Rotten Tomato. I'm like, I don't know what the Rotten Tomato thing means. Not that I don't care, but I want to know what actual people think within Native communities too. Like, not just, I mean, I don't know. It's going so big that I'm anxious to hear what other people's thoughts are on it. Yeah. We got to start healing. It's opening conversations that we never had, and our grandparents, they didn't get to talk about it. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing.
I hope that it doesn't bring trauma. However, we suffer from generational trauma. This film is definitely doesn't define us, but it definitely is a portion of our history that has shaped us. So I hope that what we come away with is that we're still here. You can make a difference in the trajectory of a film, and your voice has power.
I think that it's going to have a very strong impact on those back home, just seeing themselves in the film in many different ways. And I don't mean just the people who were actually in the film itself, but the people who see themselves in their grandparents and their great-grandparents and their ancestors in the film. I think that it's going to impact them in such a way. I hope it fills them with pride. I hope it fills them with a sense of themselves and that they can move forward in the world in a really strong way and not feel undermined or taken advantage of any longer.
I want them to know that even after everything we went through and everything you see in the movie, that we're still here and we're still doing the same things we were doing 100 years ago. So we're very traditional and we're very resilient. So
In Los Angeles, California, Paris Wise, ICT News.
It's easy to imagine the tools of an artist: canvas, brushes, oil. But what about something less, such as art from an ordinary writing instrument? ICT's Demi Dupavillon has the profile of an artist and his pens.
Quinn Honani is an artist from northern Arizona that travels to Indigenous art shows and festivals. At first glance, his drawings are so real you would think they were made from the finest supplies. In reality, he bought them from the dollar store.
My medium is actually Sharpie markers and a ballpoint pen. I usually use either a black ballpoint pen or a blue ballpoint pen. So these are some of my pieces that I've created. This is one of my more larger scale pieces here. It's all done in a blue ballpoint pen, and what I have depicted are Hilili or disciplinary kachinas, and but here I actually have them as dancers, and so I have singers or goyimsis or mudheads on top singing for them, and all of our ceremonies are a prayer for rain, and so I have a rain cloud coming up and lightning shooting out of it, and a drummer is sitting on the lightning, and up above is actually the constellation of the Milky Way, because all of our ceremonies are actually based off of the stars. And so over here I actually have another piece. It's all done in a black ballpoint pen, and it took me approximately 4 months to complete this one. This is also one of my newer pieces, and it took approximately 2 months to complete this, and this is all in a black ballpoint pen as well. I actually went to school at the Institute of American Indian Arts in 2010, and there they only wanted us to have the high-end art supplies, but then I couldn't afford all of that. And so I went to the dollar store, bought a pack of ballpoint pens, and at the time Sharpies were only $10 at Walmart. So bought that, and a lot of my instructors actually told me that it's not fine art. It's not gonna get me anywhere. Museums will not take it. It won't be accepted into fine art shows, but as you can see, I won first place at the Prescott Indian Market for Sharpie markers and a ballpoint pen. And so I guess I choose the medium because I want to show the world that you don't need, high-end, expensive art supplies to create art. Art is, something that comes from within. And so give me, something from a dollar store, and this is what I can create. Kind of made me feel like, I'm gonna show them. And so about, I would say, 13 years later of working with ballpoint pen and Sharpies, this is where it's gotten me. So, I should be as good as I am. Yeah, working at, that long. My next biggest show that I got coming up is the Herd Museum in March in Phoenix. And so my next big piece that I'm working on is probably a little bit bigger than this, and I'm gonna have nothing but animals, also with the animal kachinas as well, because it shows that I can do animals, people, and it shows a variety of different textures, and I believe I can, do all that in one piece, and I think I can, really impress some people. I prefer Bic, like a Bic ballpoint pen, just because the ball rolls a lot smoother and the ball's a lot bigger, so I'm able to control how much ink is released based on how much pressure I apply. So that's what I like. A lot of people just like to see, the results of all this, but they don't see the work and the time that I put into it. And so, I think that a lot of people, they tend to forget how much time and how much, effort it takes to create works of art like this. And so there are days when I do not feel like drawing, I do not feel like doing anything, and those are the days that I work the hardest.
On the homelands of Tohono O'odham and Piposh, Demi Dupavillon, ICT News.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.